Well, many thanks for joining us. This is Qtv News with me, Ansmana Eswanyasi. First, the main local, international and sports news headlines. Following the announcement from the Ministry of Education about the reopening of schools, the minister and her team met with stakeholders to plot the way forward. As schools prepare to reopen, we went out to find out what parents and students think. The Gambia's first job center is launched following a collaboration between the government's Department of Labour and the IOM in a bid to provide job opportunities for young people. In international news, what happens to the USA's electoral debates and more following a spate of positive COVID-19 cases among President Trump's inner circle. And a man from Congo is on a one-man mission to force European museums to return looted arts treasures to Africa. And in sports, a Gambian-Swedish light heavyweight boxer prepares for a fight this weekend, which might be his toughest yet. For more on this and other stories coming up, do stay tuned. Now the local news in detail. Following the Education Minister's announcement that there will be a phased reopening of schools from October 14th, the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education Wednesday held a day-long stakeholders bantaba to discuss the way forward. More in this report. This stakeholders meeting aims to create an avenue for sharing of ideas and suggestions ahead of the much-anticipated reopening of schools. And it also gives the ministry an opportunity to share their level of preparedness with key partners in the education sector. Highlighting the importance of the meeting, Claudiana Cole, the Minister for Basic and Secondary Education, says government recognizes the efforts of all stakeholders, especially teachers. She adds that the closure of schools is a manifestation of the severity of the impact of COVID-19. However, she urged school administrators to ensure that all precautionary measures are observed at all times, as prioritization and sequencing of response measures is crucial.
We need to learn to live with it because we cannot go into hiding for the whole year and do nothing. It wouldn't help us as individuals, it wouldn't help us as communities, and it wouldn't help us as a country. Things have to be done. We have to make progress.
Earlier, the Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education, Luis Moses Mendy, called on philanthropists and members of the public to support MOPSI facilitate the smooth reopening of schools.
The government is doing its best and it shall continue to do its best. But we are appealing to everybody, stakeholders, parents, philanthropists, well-wishers, sympathizers. Start with yourself and say, what can I do for the children of this country?
Alaji B. Sama, interim chairman, Young Teachers Platform, commended MOPSI for their foresight in organizing such a meeting. However, he set out a few demands, including the fumigation of all staff quarters and transport, which he says should be met before the resumption of face-to-face classes. He added that his organization does not compromise on teachers' welfare.
The issue of salary is quite important because we're almost going to open in the mid of the month, which is on the 14th. And we have most of our teachers are parents. So leaving your family and reporting to your school without anything behind could be very detrimental. Of course, the fumigation of schools is very, very important. Even though schools were fumigated before the grade 9s and the grade 12s resumed, they were used for about a month or so.
Other speakers included Ida Kamara, president of Mothers Club Talinding, and MOPSI regional coordinators, who all called on parents to provide their children with face masks and, if possible, water bottles. Among the key highlights of Monday's meeting is how the ministry is also working on the plight of private schools, some of whom are facing eviction, as well as lesson durations given the change in seating arrangements when schools resume. Ansumane Sonyasi for Qtv News. Following the announcement by MOPSI about the reopening of schools later this month, we find out the reaction from parents and students on their preparation after more than 6 months of closure.
On Tuesday, MOPSI announced that schools across the country will reopen for grades 7 to 12 on the 14th of October and for ECD to grade 6 on October 28. Some parents are pleased with MOPSI's decision. According to them, students have been staying at home for months without effective learning, which will have a negative impact on their education. Kumbajan, a parent, said, "It is a good decision to reopen schools, as nobody knows when the COVID-19 will disappear."
Schools should be open by now. The coronavirus is winding down and parents should take cautionary measures in masking up their kids, making sure they have these gels in their backpacks, and the school should also be prepared before they bring the kids in. But I think it's obviously time that the kids go back to school. That's my take on it. I mean, it's been months and months and months, and I think it will be good for the kids to go back into class.
Basiru Gay, another parent, outlined that schools need to reopen, but was quick to advise parents and students.
It is a good decision to reopen schools because this disease is from God, and we should continue to abide by the health guidelines and move on.
Anna Jara, a grade 7 student, and Pui, a grade 8 student, expressed optimism, adding that they will always consider the preventive measures put in place by the health experts.
We are glad that schools are reopening. We missed lessons and our classmates. We will make sure we always wash our hands and wear face masks at school.
Musa Anjai and Mike Kale, who are both parents, and this is what they have to say.
Nearly 6 months in school.
As parents, we'll do our part by sensitizing our children, but government and teachers should also do their part by making sure the school environment is safe for children.
The reopening of schools came at a time when the Ministry of Health announced that the positive cases of COVID-19 are going down in the country. However, the minister warned that we should not be complacent about this new development. Other countries around the world have closed down schools just days after reopening, when students and staffs tested positive for COVID-19. This may be a lesson about making extra preparations for us and all those other countries preparing to reopen schools. Reporting for QTV News, I am Jenna Basonko.
The Department of Labor, in collaboration with the International Organization for Migration, on Wednesday launched the first ever job center in the country to serve as a place for job creation and to support youth seeking jobs. Bob Garcia went to the opening, and this is his report.
The initiative is funded by the International Organization for Migration under the project Bridging Together Youth, Diaspora and Local Authorities for an integrated approach to promote employment and address irregular migration in the Gambia. The Commissioner of Labour, Nyalo Barrow, said the job center will go a long way in complementing government's efforts in addressing youth unemployment.
We could not have independently established the job center without the collaboration and the partnership with some stakeholders like IOM, as I mentioned already, which have provided us with support to renovate this building and provide facilities like computers and other equipment for the effective running of this center.
International Organization for Migration's Chief of Mission in the Gambia, Fumiko Nagano, said her institution has supported the government in many areas and will continue supporting, especially young people, so that they don't embark on dangerous journeys.
IOM, in close coordination with the Ministry of Trade and the Department of Labor, began this intervention in February of this year, when we received a request for support from the department. Recognizing the importance of the proposed intervention and recognizing that this will contribute to an important goal of the Gambian government to address youth unemployment, IOM gladly took on the task of renovating and equipping this center. These activities are all geared towards achieving the shared goals of IOM and its member states. Maximize the benefits of migration while reducing the adverse effects of irregular migration. Within this broader objective, initiatives such as this job center fill structural needs that have largely remained unaddressed. In the case of this job center, that need comes in the form of lack of information on the labor market. By contributing to efforts that aim at filling this gap, IOM believes it is possible to tackle youth unemployment and ensure sustainable reintegration support to returning migrants by providing opportunities.
The Deputy Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Trade, Hassan S. Gay, thanked IOM for another great intervention in supporting the government to help curb youth unemployment.
The International Organization for Migration has been a close partner of the Ministry of Trade. Since the presence of IOM in the country, significant progress has been registered by the organization in various interventions, ranging from skills training, entrepreneurial training, reintegration, and settlement of returnees, amongst others, given the high rate of national unemployment rate at 35.2% based on current estimates in the country, particularly youth unemployment rate at 41.5%, as indicated in the key findings of the 2018 National Labour Force Survey. The importance of the public employment services cannot be underestimated. The refurbishment of the job center and its positive impact it will have in employment creation cannot come at a better time.
The Gambia has a 60% youth population for whom unemployment remains their biggest challenge. The creation of the job center should help create youth employment, which may discourage the so-called backway syndrome. Babu Karsi, QTV News.
And from that report, we take a short commercial break. But when we return, the news continues with some more local news stories. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is QTV News. The Ministry of Health today launched a vehicle-mounted fogging machine, a sprayer device for the control of adult mosquitoes and other pests, which will be deployed at a large number of locations. The machine is expected to contribute towards malaria prevention and control. Mohamed Lamin Choi reports.
The Minister of Health, with senior officials of his ministry, is launching a sprayer machine to help combat malaria, a disease that kills annually 700,000 people in sub-Saharan Africa. The sprayer is mounted on this pickup truck and will be operated outdoor at various municipalities between 7 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. There are also plans to sensitize the public on operational guidelines of the sprayer machine.
The National Malaria Control Program will be applying the mosquito fog in areas where nuisance biting insects species are common. This will create a sort of mosquito control barrier that will prevent new mosquitoes from coming inside treated areas, and therefore you will be able to see even better mosquito control results.
The anti-mosquito sprayer machine is also said to be safe for public health and cost-effective for pest control. For an effective nightly spraying of streets, it is considered to be a useful practice for residents to leave their doors and windows open during the spraying hours to kill mosquitoes in their houses.
The insecticides to be used are the usual household insecticides, so they are safe for the human beings. But of course, the guidelines of the usage of the machine will be well circulated and people will be adequately sensitized.
Minister Samateri collects the prevalence and effective usage of such sprayer machine during the First Republic for malaria control and prevention. The vehicle-mounted sprayer machine cost around $30,000, and the National Malaria Control Program had requested its procurement through the Global Fund. The minister thanks the National Malaria Control Program manager for his proactive efforts towards service delivery for the country.
He saw that other people get motivated. Sometimes the ideas, the input, doesn't have to come from the leader. It comes from the other individuals. Bring up positive ideas to your head. Bring out progressive things that will benefit this country. All that your head needs to do is to support you. And then this is the result of that support. So if he had not brought that to my attention, we wouldn't be launching this machine today.
Reports from the National Malaria Control Program show the prevalence of malaria at 0.1%, a significantly low milestone for Gambia's long battle against malaria. The Gambia's journey towards becoming a malaria-free country might register a slide back due to a shift in global healthcare attention, being heavily focused on the fight against COVID-19. Mohamed Lamin Choi, QTV News.
The Kanifing Municipal Council, with support from the British High Commission, has launched a solar-powered cold storage unit for women vegetable sellers at the Serekunda market. More in this report.
The facility will help women vegetable sellers at the Serekunda market minimize the high percentage of vegetable losses due to spoilage. This is the first cold storage unit to be installed at the Serekunda market. The project will also reduce the cost of transportation as they will now have an opportunity to buy in bulk.
The project is a very innovative project. It is part of our response because we understand how hard it has been for the market women during this pandemic. We understand that you have lost business because of the pandemic, and this is part of my government's effort to help the economic of the Gambia.
In an interview at his chambers, the mayor strongly emphasized that sustainability is guaranteed for this project.
And this cold storage facility, which is solar powered, is meant to ensure that the risk of spoilage due to the heat is reduced or eliminated. As you know, many of these women are mothers. Many of them are also the breadwinners of their family, paying for the bills of their school fees, paying many household bills, and spoilages can account for big losses and can really hurt their income. So I think this will go a long way to ensure that these losses are eliminated and women do better in their businesses as far as vegetables are concerned.
Fatu Job is one of the beneficiaries, and she believes that, if implemented properly, this project will go a long way towards enabling their businesses to grow. This project is very important because having somewhere to keep your remaining stock after selling is important to avoid huge losses. The mayor informed us that there are plans to expand the project to incorporate seafood sellers. Reporting for QTV News, I am Jenna Bosonko.
And from that report, we take a second commercial break. But still to come is international news and sports as well. Welcome back. Over now to international news. Since U.S. President Donald Trump tweeted early on Friday that he and his wife had tested positive for COVID-19, more than half a dozen of his administration's top officials have also tested positive. More in this report. No sooner had President Trump tested positive than his senior aide, Hope Hicks, also announced that he had contracted the disease. Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany and 3 other staff in the press office have also tested positive. Stephen Miller, President Trump's senior policy advisor, speechwriter, and often referred to as the architect of the Trump administration's war on immigrants, announced that he had tested positive on Tuesday. Since Friday, when the president announced his COVID-19 diagnosis, as many as 23 people in and around his orbit have contracted the disease, according to some reports. The outbreak extended beyond the White House walls and reached the Senate and the Pentagon. Nearly all members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a body consisting of senior military officials who advised the U.S. president, are in quarantine, according to the BBC. In addition, others in quarantine are said to include the Vice Chief of Staff, the Army Chief of Staff, the Chief of Naval Operations, the Air Force Chief of Staff, Cybercom Commander, Space Force Chief, Chief of the National Guard, and Deputy Commandant of the Marine Corps. The epicenter of this outbreak appears to have been the ceremony hosted by Trump in the White House Rose Garden to announce his nominee for the U.S. Supreme Court, Amy Coney Barrett. According to reports, guests, many without masks, packed into the outdoor space, and some were also photographed together indoors. As President Trump recovers at the White House, his second presidential debate, originally scheduled for October 15th against Democratic challenger Joe Biden, appears to now be up in the air. Mr. Trump has said he intends to take part, but there are fears that he will still pose a risk of infecting others so soon after falling ill. Asked about the debate, Mr. Biden, who has tested negative in consecutive COVID-19 tests, said he would do whatever the experts say in terms of participating in a debate, but adding, "I think we should be very cautious." The outbreak has also possibly thrown a spanner in the works for the Republican Party's plan to speedily process the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett to replace the late Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. 2 members of the Senate Judiciary Committee have tested positive, and are now unable to be physically present for hearings that were originally scheduled to begin this week. Democrats have demanded that the nomination process be postponed to safeguard the safety of senators and staff, as Senate rules require in-person attendance for voting. But according to reports, Republican Judiciary Committee leader and Trump ally Lindsey Graham has vowed to proceed with the hearings and could move to alter the rules to allow the quarantined senators to vote remotely. He has scheduled the committee hearings to begin on October 12. Many of the press reactions around the world were quick to pick up on the irony of a president who had spent months downplaying COVID-19, indeed tweeting in February, "The coronavirus is very much under control in the US," but ends up contracting it together with the top brass of his administration. An additional irony being that he mocked his opponent in the debate, Joe Biden, for always wearing a mask. After this latest series of infections, it will be interesting to see whether the president and his acolytes will continue to flout mask-wearing rules. Ansumana Sonyasi for Qtv News. The Ghana Police Force says it has retrieved firearms stolen by the suspected Volta secessionist after recent attacks. Alosise reports.
In a video, policemen are seen marching through a pathway in a bush with a man suspected to be a member of a secessionist group, leading them to where the weapons are buried. The region has seen increasing violence from separatists who want to break away and form their own country of Western Togoland. Media reports on the video appears to show that the items include at least 2 rifles wrapped in a black plastic bag were dug out of the ground where they had been hidden. In September, the Ghana Police Force announced it had retrieved weapons and vehicles stolen by the group after a simultaneous attack was launched by the group on 2 police stations in Aveyemi and Mepe. 31 people are reported to have been arrested in connection with the crime. Subsequently, another group attacked the Ho STC yard and burned 2 out of 11 buses parked in the yard. The Ghana police have called for calm while assuring the situation is under control. The Oti Regional Minister Kwesi Owusu-Yebo says the activities of the group is targeted at the incumbent NPP administration, saying such attacks were not happening under the RNDC and NDC administrations. Many see this as political spin doctoring. The region has long fostered a desire to break away from what its natives say was a forced marriage when it became part of Ghana, not long after the Ghana gained independence and changed its name from the Gold Coast. He believes some political actors and elements are behind the disturbance witnessed in the Volta region. The latest recovery of weapons and recent violent clashes only serve to heighten tension in the region. Ghana's government has stated categorically that it will not allow the region to break away. Reporting for QTV News, I am Aliou Cisse.
A Congolese activist is facing a court trial in France for trying to take stolen African artworks from European museums. In the summer, Congolese activist Emery Mwazulu Diabanza was in the spotlight when he and 4 other activists attempted to take a totem pole out of the Kwai Branly Museum of Non-European Art in Paris. Alosise has more.
The men were protesting against the handling of looted art from the colonial era. According to Diabanza, European governments have failed to fulfill their promises to return looted art from the colonial era. "We are taking it home" was the catchphrase in a film video of the protest posted on social media. Now the 5 activists are on trial in Paris. Diabanza might also face trials in other cities where he had tried to walk out of museums with looted artworks. A defiant Diabanza said the move was justified even if it was risky. "We had no intention of stealing this work, but will continue as long as the injustice of pillaging Africa has not been remedied," he told AFP news agency. In 2018, French President Emmanuel Macron commissioned Savoy and the Senegalese economist and writer Felwine Sarr to conduct extensive research into colonial art. According to their report, about 85 to 90% of African artworks and objects were located outside the African continent, with the world's leading museums displaying African sculptures, masks, burial objects, jewelry, and ritual objects. DW reports that the French national collections alone have 90,000 African objects, 70,000 of which are to be found in the Quai Branly Museum in Paris. In 2018, Macron told students at the University of Ouagadougou in Burkina Faso that a large part of these objects will eventually be returned to the former colonial states during his term in office. A year later, France temporarily returned to Senegal a 19th century sword that belonged to Senegalese Islamic scholar and ruler Oumar Tall. Born in Kinshasa, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Diabanza founded the Movement for Unity, Dignity and Courage (UDC) in 2014, which among other goals works for the return of artifacts. Diabanza is charged with attempted joint theft of a cultural asset. The 5 activists he worked with faced up to 10 years in prison and a fine of 150,000 euros. On June 30th, Diabanza filed a complaint against the French state for theft and concealment with regards to the stolen colonial art. On July 30th, he was arrested in Marseille after confiscating an ivory object at the Museum of African, Oceanic and Indian Art. 2 weeks ago, he walked out of a Dutch museum with a Congolese tomb sculpture but was stopped by police. Britain has also faced calls to return artifacts, notably the Elgin marbles to Greece and the Benin bronzes to Nigeria, whilst museums in Belgium and Austria house tens of thousands of African pieces. On Tuesday, French lawmakers voted unanimously to return prized artifacts to Benin and Senegal more than a century after they were looted and now displayed in museums in Paris. Reporting for QTV News, I am Aliou Cisse.
And in sports, Gambian Swedish light heavyweight boxer Tijan Kebe, alias the Black Cobra, will enter the ring again on Saturday in Germany for the first time since the COVID-19 pandemic began. Our sports reporter Mamoudou Gajaga spoke to him earlier about his fight, which is 3 days away. This is his report.
Intense training for the big showdown on Saturday, which will see 10 international boxers take to the ring. Among them, Tijan Kebe, also known as the Black Cobra. He will have to be at his best in order to claim victory in this battle. Despite the long wait for a competitive fight, he appears to be in an upbeat mood.
We have the opportunity to fight this Saturday, so we don't waste it. We're going to fight for the fight and try to bring the victory for our people, Gambians and Swedish people, So for that, we're asking all of you your prayers,
Tijan had been an amateur boxer for years before turning professional in 2018. With the guidance of his coach and trainer, Ayman Bijilo, they are gradually improving their ranking and performance in the Swedish and European boxing scene. The Black Cobra has won his last 3 fights in Germany against Branislav Dosevic, Alexandra Kuvak, and Slobodan Vukic. This time, though, he is paired against Bosnian Dino Hadjerovic in the light heavyweight category. His opponent won his first 2 fights by knockout.
Yes, we are confident that we're going to win the fight, We are confident that, So we're going to fight this guy and trying to bring the victory, And we're confident that, we're going to win the fight by knockout, inshallah.
Kebe will go into the fight of 6 rounds at the event organized by the PSP Boxing Promotion in Dorf, Mecklenburg. Tijan has been a familiar face in Germany, having fought there previously, and the audience would love to see the Black Cobra again because of his boxing skills and hard, exciting fighting style.
So the thing we're going to get from this, to make ourselves keep busy in the boxing community, And then at the same time, in the ranking also is good, because when we win this fight, it's going to push us a little bit up in the ranking, Not going to be like before, but still good.
As the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic hits Europe, the number of spectators watching the fight is limited to 200 people. Tijan has had 6 professional bouts, winning 5 and losing 1. Will it be another victory for the Gambian boxer? Only time will tell. We wish him well in what has been referred to both as the sweet science and the hardest game. Mamoudou Gajaga, QTV News.
And I'm afraid that's all about it, but before we take a leave of you, here's a recap of our main headlines. Following the announcement from the Ministry of Education about the reopening of schools, the minister and her team met with stakeholders to plot the way forward. As schools prepared to reopen, we went out to find out what parents and students think. The Gambia's first job center is launched following a collaboration between the government's Department of Labour and the IOM in a bid to provide job opportunities for young people. In international news, what happens to the USA's electoral debates and more following a spate of COVID-19 cases among President Trump's inner circle. And a man from Congo is on a one-man mission to force European museums to return looted arts treasures to Africa. And in sports, a Gambian Swedish light heavyweight boxer prepares for a fight this weekend, which might be his toughest yet. Well, I'm afraid that's all we have for you in this edition of the news, but do join us at 10 p.m. for another bulletin. Bye for now.